Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, here to observe the finer points of the human condition from my armchair of perpetual skepticism.
And I'm Alara Sky, the somewhat hyperactive brain that can't resist a good punchline or a fascinating health tip. Welcome, everyone. If you're new, Ethan is basically the comedic equivalent of a speed bump. He'll slow you down just enough that you notice all the details. And I'll try to keep you on your toes with a little wit and wisdom.
That's our synergy in a nutshell. Today we're exploring how juicing affects your gut and oral microbiome, based on insights from Dr. Mercola. I must say, the phrase microbiome sounds suspiciously like something from a sci-fi novel, but apparently it's in our bodies right now, whether we like it or not.
Oh, I'm convinced my personal microbiome is the reason I have an unusual craving for pickles at 2 a.m. I'd prefer a simpler explanation like lack of willpower, but apparently microbes like to whisper sweet nothings to my taste buds.
Well, pickles aside, the gist is that Dr. Mercola has pointed out that juicing, while once celebrated, may not be the holy grail of health if you're ignoring that crucial element called fiber.
Let's set the stage for our dear listeners. There was a study published in the journal Nutrients, looking at how juicing fruits and veggies affects our gut and oral microbiomes. In short, removing fiber can wreak havoc on beneficial bacteria.
And by wreak havoc, we mean it decreases beneficial microbial diversity and increases the villainous, inflammation-linked strains. It's like firing your best employees and hiring a bunch of workplace troublemakers. In the study, participants were split into 3 groups. One group drank only juice, apparently the minimal chewing group. Another group had both juice and whole foods. And the last group had exclusively whole foods with that ever-glorious fiber intact.
If this was a reality show, we'd have a very clear winner: the whole food group. Their microbes basically threw a party, becoming more diverse and protective of the gut lining, while the juice-only group's microbes began plotting world domination, or at least an inflammatory takeover.
So we can conclude that fiber is critical. Removing it, as with straight-up juicing, can lead to an imbalance known as dysbiosis. That's a fancy medical term for everything's out of whack and trouble's coming.
Exactly. One interesting finding was how the juice-only folks ended up with higher levels of certain bacterial strains linked to inflammation and even cognitive decline.
And apparently some of these are associated with anxiety-like behavior in mice, not to mention stress and gut permeability.
When your gut barrier becomes more permeable, that's leaky gut territory. Harmful substances can literally slip through your intestinal walls and enter your bloodstream, which you don't need a medical degree to know is bad news.
The concept of leaky gut sounds suspiciously like a plumbing problem, except plumbers probably won't fix this one, no matter how many phone calls you make.
That's the gut side. But we also have an oral microbiome, which apparently changes even faster. Think about it. Your mouth is the first place food lands. If you're loading it with sugar-rich juice minus the fiber, those little troublemakers are going to jump at the chance to multiply.
I suppose we could think of fiber as the bouncer at a club. You remove that bouncer and all sorts of shady characters waltz right in.
Precisely. Without fiber, the sugar in the juice has no buffer. It's like the mouth is hosting a 24-hour candy store. That can increase the likelihood of cavities, gum disease, and a generally disgruntled dentist.
So now that we've painted the bleak scenario of what happens without fiber, let's switch gears to the positive. The fiber-laden group had more beneficial bacteria, including Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, which helps produce butyrate. Butyrate's a short-chain fatty acid that's essential for a healthy gut lining, reduced inflammation, and other benefits.
Butyrate is basically an all-star for colon health. It feeds your colon cells, reduces inflammation, and might even help keep those so-called bad guys at bay. The fiber in your diet is critical for that, because fiber is the raw material these bacteria ferment into butyrate.
This means that if you're going to do any form of detox or elimination diet, you'd better remember to keep fiber around so your beneficial bacteria don't pack up and leave for a different host.
I like to imagine beneficial bacteria as loyal tenants who pay rent on time and keep the place tidy. If you suddenly remove all the amenities like fiber, those tenants say, "Peace out, we're moving to someone else's gut," and you're left with party animals who trash the place.
That's quite the mental image. Now, Dr. Mercola once championed juicing for the nutrient density, but he's since shifted to emphasize that fiber is vital. It turns out that retaining fiber means you get the vitamins, minerals, and the prebiotics that feed your gut flora.
Precisely. And one interesting note from the study: the participants following an elimination diet with lots of whole, plant-based foods saw beneficial changes. It's not that they avoided all sugar, but they avoided the concentrated sugar rush of juice without fiber.
It's like the difference between an entire orchard of fruit versus a jug of apple juice. One requires chewing, digestion, and the presence of fiber. The other is essentially candy water, in terms of how fast it hits your system.
Candy water. I like that. It captures the essence nicely. But that's not to say we're condemning juice forever. Some experts suggest blending rather than juicing. That way you keep the fiber. Sure, the texture might be different, but your gut bacteria will cheer and possibly hold up thank you signs.
Or you could add the pulp back in if you really love the juice experience. That pulp is the fiber, so don't toss it if you want to preserve some of the benefits.
Yes, though blending is more convenient. The caveat is, if you're used to a low-fiber lifestyle, you might want to increase your fiber gradually. Going from zero to hero can lead to, shall we say, interesting digestive protests.
Ah, yes, the age-old too much fiber, too fast phenomenon. The body complains in ways that your roommates and family won't appreciate.
Let's also talk about short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs, for a second. They're produced when fiber is fermented in your gut. The more fiber you have, the more SCFAs you potentially produce. And these SCFAs reduce inflammation, help your gut lining stay intact, and regulate various metabolic processes.
In short, SCFAs are like the librarians of your gut, keeping everything organized and quiet. No librarians? Then you get chaos and a bunch of rowdy kids shouting over each other, also known as pro-inflammatory microbes.
Which is a visual I'd rather avoid, but yes. So that's the gut aspect. Now for the oral microbiome, the big takeaway is that a sudden influx of sugar, like from fruit juice, can shift the bacterial population. The fiber in whole produce helps mitigate that by slowing sugar absorption and encouraging chewing, which boosts saliva. Saliva, in turn, helps keep oral bacteria in balance.
So, if someone is set on having juice for some reason, sipping slowly might help, as opposed to chugging it like your body is a speedway for sugar. But the ideal route? Eat whole foods, chew thoroughly, and keep your fiber intact.
Dr. Mercola suggests that if you love juice, you don't have to banish it altogether. But if you do drink it, pair it with whole foods or toss in the pulp. That way, your body doesn't get hammered by pure sugar.
Let's not forget that beneficial bacteria in the gut also rely on resistant starches, like what you find in bananas or cooked then cooled potatoes. That's another angle. Certain kinds of fiber, especially prebiotic fiber, are like a VIP buffet for good microbes.
Absolutely. And to maintain that healthy oral microbiome, remember to brush, floss, and maybe hold off on sipping sugary drinks all day. Whether it's soda or fresh-pressed juice, your teeth and gums do notice the sugar.
Another piece of the puzzle is fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, assuming you tolerate dairy, are loaded with probiotics that can fortify your microbiome from the inside out.
Yes, we can't forget about fermented foods. They basically deliver beneficial bacteria right to your gut so they can bolster your existing colonies. Just don't chase them down with a big glass of sugar-laden juice, or you'll be sending mixed signals.
I'm imagining the beneficial bacteria going, yes, we're here to help, only to get blindsided by sugar-fueled troublemakers.
Picture a band of friendly knights walking into a wild medieval tavern brawl. It's not the introduction they were hoping for.
Now, for people who wonder whether the negative microbial changes happen quickly, the study indicated that some of these shifts manifested within 3 weeks. That's fairly fast.
Indeed, your gut is dynamic. Give it the right inputs, and it can flourish. Give it the wrong ones, and watch the chaos ensue. The oral microbiome changes even more rapidly because it's basically your front line for everything that comes in.
So, bottom line, fiber is your gut's best friend. Removing it by juicing sets you up for potential problems like decreased diversity, less short-chain fatty acid production, and a weaker gut barrier.
Juicing also feeds sugar-craving bacteria that can cause inflammation. Meanwhile, your oral microbiome can morph into something akin to a sugar-fueled block party with questionable attendees.
If you love juice, you can keep the fiber by blending or by adding some pulp back in. But it's often simpler to just eat the fruit or vegetable in its whole form. That way, you're maximizing the synergy of nutrients plus fiber.
Let's highlight a few practical tips before we sign off. If you've been juicing heavily and want to shift gears, start by adding small amounts of whole fruits or lightly steamed vegetables. Gradually work your way up to more fibrous choices like raw greens to avoid shocking your system.
And if you still love that juice texture, a high-powered blender can create pretty smooth concoctions while keeping the fiber. It might not be exactly the same as pressed juice, but your body will appreciate the difference.
Also, keep in mind that variety is key. You want diverse produce to feed a diverse cast of microbial characters. Different fibers feed different strains. It's like providing different musical instruments for a symphony, so everything sounds harmonious.
And no single approach will fit everyone's preferences or lifestyles, but one principle stands out: fiber matters. Whether you get it from apples, carrots, or leafy greens, it's not optional if you want to maintain robust gut and oral health.
Of course, if you occasionally want a fresh juice, that's your choice. But now you know how it can affect your microbiome and what steps you can take to mitigate those effects, like sipping slowly, blending, or pairing it with something fiber-rich.
Any final thoughts on the matter, Ilara?
Well, in the spirit of comedic insight, it's basically a cosmic joke that we spent years praising juice as the ultimate health elixir, only to find out later that the missing fiber was the real secret sauce all along. But that's the story of modern wellness, isn't it?
Indeed it is. We latch onto something that sounds healthy, only to discover that nature intended it to be consumed in a more complete form. Turns out, nature's designs aren't half bad.
It's as if nature knew that oranges should be eaten, not put through an industrial press. Once again, the intelligence of our bodies and the foods they thrive on reveals itself in the simplest ways.
So, to all our listeners, if you've been on a juicing craze, don't beat yourself up. Just consider letting the fiber back in. Your gut and teeth will thank you.
That's our show for today, folks. You've been listening to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom, where we delve into the hidden intricacies of human health and poke a little fun along the way.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Ethan Foster, the armchair philosopher questioning everything.
And I'm Alara Sky, the comedic educator ready to dish out one-liners and health tips in equal measure. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into your cells, your health, and your laughter. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.